Welcome to the podcast, Yosha. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing so good. I really weathered the storm to be here today. So thanks for having me on.
Well, we're really glad that you're on the podcast today. Welcome back to Dear Future X. I'm going to get straight into it. Who are you, Yosha, and what do you do?
So I am quite a few things. I'd probably say I'm a medical student, first and foremost, the first passion I fell in love with. Then I am also a master's student, currently studying at King's, the master's in MedTech, Entrepreneurship and Innovation. I am also a co-founder and business owner as of this year, and I am a content creator for fun. Yep.
That's crazy.
That is a lot. Oh wow! I like how I take it especially for content creation as well as medicine related as well.
So it started off very med ed related, and now it's branching a little bit more into my lifestyle and personal branding.
Okay, that's interesting. And for your medtech kind of venture that you're doing, are you able to tell us a bit more about that?
The MedTech venture.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess a great place to start is maybe speaking on why I am so enthusiastic about MedTech. Well, in healthcare, obviously being a medical student, you get very privileged and close insight into how things work in the hospitals, in patient clinics. And what I see is a very slow uptake of medtech devices being brought to market. And these are devices that can radically change a patient's treatment journey.
100%.
And seeing that, I was thinking there must be a solution to accelerate this.
Yeah.
There are so many boxes that you have to tick to get a product to market, but not just the UK, really anywhere. However, especially being implemented in the NHS, I found that this is an area that we need a few more innovators in. So in terms of my MedTech venture, very young company at the minute, and we're definitely not closing ourselves off to anything. We are completely open to continuing to find pain points. But in a nutshell, what we're doing is helping companies who have achieved funding, who've already done a bit of research and development and have a prototype in place, bring their products into market. And even if they're at the stage where they want to navigate their regulations, they want to navigate getting investment or funding, we offer business strategy for that too. So that's a very brief kind of overview, but there's a lot of sort of services that we overlap into.
Yeah. And for those who don't know, do you want to, you want to explain the name of your
Yes,
company?
oh my gosh, I just went on about it, didn't even tell you the name. Yeah, so it's All Beyond. We have a TikTok, a LinkedIn, and Insta that we're trying our best to keep everybody engaged on. So All Beyond.
That's amazing. Like I thought when me and Reese, when I first met you as well at the personal branding event.
Yes,
remember?
yeah.
And you told me the name of the company, Orbion. I thought it was so cool because me and Reese, like even coming up with the name of the podcast, it wants to be a bit
It's hard,
unique.
no?
Yeah,
It's hard.
Yeah.
Even finding the name, me and my co-founder were like racking our brains for ages. We're like, this one sounds too weird. Like we had a few other contenders and they sounded like, ophthalmology type. And we were like, we're not an eye company. So we got to head back to the drawing board. But yeah, it's difficult to find a name.
It's the type of thing that I feel like the more you look at a word, the weird it
for
becomes. And then more often, something's really wrong about this.
so much.
Yeah.
Even like the spelling, Orbion is now spelled Orbion. One of the contenders was Orbeon. And
Just
then
one letter.
Yeah, just one letter. But then when we read it, we were like, it says Orbeen. Like someone's gonna read it and say that. So yeah.
That's really interesting. And you mentioned your co-founder as well. Would you like to talk a little bit about how you met and how you decided? I'm not sure who came up with the idea first, or did you come up with the idea when you found?
Yeah, so my co-founder, his name is Tristan. He is currently a fourth year medical student, and we knew each other through mutuals initially, and we both, obviously coming from a medical clinical background, but fascinated by the world of technology and engineering and how this is facilitated into medicine. That's what led us to think about finding solutions for this space. It was definitely an idea that we came up with together, and it took a lot of what problem are we trying to solve? What pain points are we trying to address to come to the concept that we have now? But of course, it's still evolving. We're still engaging with several stakeholders in MedTech, whether that be clinicians that are going to adopt these devices, investors, even people down the supply chain. It's really important to get their opinions to figure out where we could best help.
So did you always know you wanted to go into some kind of medtech thing? And you mentioned you're doing an intercalated degree. Would you like to explain what that is to anyone who doesn't know? And the question, going back to what I was asking, did you know you were going to go into medtech before you took the intercalated degree, or was it during?
So actually, in second year, I took a programming module as part of my medical school degree. And I'm really grateful they actually offered this up to us. It was MATLAB, and your girl's not a programmer. I'm not a maths girl. I can't do programming. And then I just started, and I just tried my hand at it, really. I can't say it's what I dreamed of doing forever, like programming and coding, but it opened me up to seeing how useful that skill is and which areas need programming, analytical thinking, those kind of skills. And it got me looking into MedTech. That was around second year. Third year, I continued, studying, attending placement, gathering more and more insights through reading the news, what's happening in MedTech. And some of the things that were going on, I was like, whoa, I really want to be part of this landscape. That led me to actually apply for my master's, which is obviously, as I mentioned, MedTech, entrepreneurship and innovation. Now, that combines not just engineering, technology, computing, but also, and on a background of healthcare, obviously, but also finance, marketing, leadership, understanding trends in business. And I feel like I've always been very entrepreneurial. I may not have always known that it was MedTech I want to go down, but I definitely knew I wanted something of my own to create. And in terms of you asking what an intercalated degree is, I'm pretty sure most medics in the UK have the opportunity to pursue a 1-year almost gap from their traditional 5-year course. Obviously, some courses with a foundation year are already 6 years, but mine was a 5-year MBBS course, and it varies from uni to uni what year you do this in, but for our university, after third year, you get to take a year out, do a degree that you are interested in. Most people opt for clinical specialties. Like if I want to be a cardiothoracic surgeon, I might do a BSc in cardiovascular medicine, for example. I don't know what I want to specialize in at this moment, but I knew I was really enthusiastic about MedTech. I wanted to steer away a little bit from the research and academia for a year. And that's what led me to this master's.
I so agree with that. It's like a lot, especially for me, I'm in my third year, also at King's. We're all actually King's medical students. And it's like this time of the year in December, this podcast film in December time, that we have to start deciding whether or not we want to intercalate. And definitely a lot of people I'm talking to, it is very clinical in a way. But there's actually, I think, especially in the recent years, there's a surprising amount that are interested in entrepreneurship. But what's really lucky, especially for us at King's, is that we have the MedTech and entrepreneurship, MSc, which is the one you're doing. But have you explored like other business intercalations as well, especially in London? Because I hear a lot of people are talking about Imperial, like on different ones.
I can't lie, Imperial Management was looking great as well. I asked.
That's super competitive as well. Right?
Everybody says that, but hey, I think if you apply, if you got the skills, the insight, like why would you not get it?
If you really want it.
If you want it, why would you not get it at this point? But I know that's probably quite naive to say, but there's a few people from my year that are doing that. I think because I wanted something that was more healthcare focused, especially health and technology focused, that's why I ended up going with this. And it's a master's, of course, that played into my decision. But yeah, in London you got management at Imperial. I'm sure you have other entrepreneurial style courses, and I actually think they're developing some ones for future candidates to take.
That's really interesting to hear about the intercalated degrees available at all London University, and I'm pretty sure they do it other places in the UK as well, like you mentioned. Going back to your startup, when did you start it? When did you think of the idea? Was it like before you took your intercalated degree? Or was it during? Like, I know the guy who runs it, right? What's his name?
Professor Prashant.
He has so many skills, and he leads you in this intercalated degree. And how has he helped you as well with the development of the idea?
Okay, so that's really interesting because I, as I mentioned, wanted to be a startup founder, a business owner for a very long time. It's not my first startup. And the idea from concept to attending our first client took less than 30 days. And that's only because we weren't, I know it sounds crazy. It sounds crazy to say, but honestly, I think it's because we weren't shy about fast iterations and failing. We're going to do what we can at the minute with the resources and skills we have. We're going to deliver our best services for now, but that doesn't mean that's what we have to commit to forever and ever. We're constantly reiterating and figuring out, okay, how can we make it better? And that's why we got to attend to our first client so quickly, I think. Yeah, sorry, we had further questions there.
When did you start it?
Yeah, so I would say probably around a month or so into my master's degree. And in terms of my professor, first of all, I feel like I attend lessons and this man has done something new every time. Every time I attend, it's like he's started a new company or he's invested or he made ventilators during COVID or just insane things that you think like, how are you an engineer, a doctor, you're in law school, you're every brown parent's dream, like, that's...
It's like he's doing new stuff, but also he tells like stories of things he did before. It's like it's like 2 new stories every time.
So casually as well, like, oh yeah, I just headed this massive organization and in this massive department and just made millions, that kind of thing. It's so... Maybe paraphrasing. But no, it's that kind of thing that makes me think like, first of all, how refreshing is it to have a professor that has that knowledge and they chose teaching? They could do anything they want in the world. And that's the profession they decide to marry, as he says. And I think every lesson, hearing about, actually, it is feasible to have a startup. Of course, it's busy. No one's going to sell you the fake story of, everyone romanticizes being a startup founder. There's lots of fails along the journey. But he makes it seem like, why aren't you able to do this? If you really want to do it, you have all the resources. And I think all of us are very privileged that we go to this university, we have access to the teachers, to the resources. So why would you not want to take advantage of that?
And we're in London as well. It's
Yeah,
like literally
exactly.
the city of innovation and opportunity. And especially for...
You should brand that.
we should.
Trademark. Yeah.
And especially for it, and he's actually taught me so much about teaching as well. It's like you lead by example. And
You're
it's,
doing a research project, didn't you?
yeah. So I'm working with Professor Prashant for my scholarly project as well.
Amazing.
For the biomedical engineering, and it's just so inspiring whenever it's like I get what you're saying of there's no reason why you can't have a startup, right? I mean, for him, he's literally the most busiest person.
For real.
And he can still do it, and he can still teach, and he can still design that course and lead it, right?
Yeah, and he can still answer our silly questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's actually amazing. But I find like it really impressive that you started the MedTech startup 1 month into your intercalation, and
Yeah.
like starting 1 month, you got your first client 1 month in as well. What was it like getting the first client?
So this is a really important learning point. At first, I was like, ooh, how do people go about acquiring clients, gaining interest for their services? Tristan's friend is actually the founder and the lead of the Copenhagen MedTech organization. And they host these annual summits, these MedTech summits, and they invite big players in the game. So think Novo Nordisk or even GE was at the event this year. And they are essentially there to help recruits and show students, new opportunities they could take part in. But in terms of how we got our first client, it was through Tristan's network. And so the reason why I think that's so impressive and important is that whoever you surround yourself with, or the kind of rooms that you go into, the people that you speak to, you don't know if in future they're going to be your co-founder, they're going to be your investor, they're going to be one of the key stakeholders in whatever you deliver. So your network is something to protect and something to nurture for sure.
Yeah, I think you mentioned about how you got your first client, but to those out there who are thinking about this startup, what exact steps could they take to get to what you've done, right, with your first client? Because, you mentioned your co-founder has his network. Is it to find a co-founder, or is it to do some market research and see if there's actually demand for it first?
Really good question. I think at the end of the day, you want to, as Professor Prashant says, you want to fall in love with a problem, not a solution. You want to fall in love with an idea and the potential you have to execute that idea, not the person that you will be doing it with. That doesn't mean you don't need to have great chemistry with your co-founder. We all know this. It's really important to get along. However, I would say for people who are looking to start their own startup, learn, literally consume as much research, whatever's going on in the news currently, figure out what's going on. If you're a medical student, there are so many problems you can see, just face value in the wards that you are in. Figure out what the problems are, and then once you have some sort of plan in terms of, okay, this is how I feel this could be solved, whether it's a software, hardware, service-based solution, and then you are gonna, if it's a problem that exists. And if you've got a pretty good way to tackle it, even if that's not your final iteration of that, you're going to find people that are excited about it. And when people are excited, they're ready to join like that. Like I think Yash, you're a really good example as well of this, of what you're doing with Clear and Ahana. When a product sounds great and it sounds like it could really impact lives, you immediately want to be involved. So I wouldn't worry so much about, you want to take your time with the person you're doing business with. You don't want to rush into a co-founder dynamic, but also take your time in terms of finding the problem that you want to solve.
Yeah. Just to add a little bit more detail to that, when you mentioned about finding the problem, right?
Yeah.
And then seeing if people are in love with it, how can people test that almost? Because we also discussed this a little bit on a different podcast as well with Sally. And it was almost like how to do like almost surveys in like Facebook groups or stuff like that. Did you do any with that? Do you do any of that with Albion?
Absolutely, yes. We are spending a lot of time, like Tristan right now, every time I speak to the guy, he's spoken to some new co-founder, some new CEO, and try to, not to sell anything, not to even talk about Albion, but just to say...
It's like Rashad.
Just to ask them, oh, what's your business model like? What kind of challenges are you facing? If there was one problem that we could solve for you, what would that look like? And just gathering information, fostering these relationships. So that would be important. But also, remind me again what you wanted me to answer.
So it's more like for people wanting to find that market research almost. Would it be like Facebook groups or Reddit groups? And you mentioned like Tristan, reach out to people asking questions, but did you also do any online things? Because that can be a really good, people can access it really easily and you can get some good attention.
Especially as you were mentioning at surveys, it's having that data in front of you, it's almost irrefutable. You can do a lot with that. So what we did, one of the things that we're doing is we designed a very tailored survey to MedTech co-founders, people in C-suite roles. And we took that with us to Copenhagen, where we found, a lot of the people that are working in the same space as us. We asked them a few questions. Wherever we go in terms of conferences, we have those questions in that survey in the back of our mind. So it's not a case of, here, fill out the survey, please, 2 minutes, we need your time. We need their insights, we need their inputs. But we make it conversational and natural. And then people, when you really do care about what people's problems are, they will tell you and they'll start to speak about it. So market research, incredibly important. You can do it with Facebook groups if you want. We like going down the survey/email marketing and face-to-face kind of meeting route. But also having a personal brand is great because you get a nice reach from there.
Yeah, you talked quite a lot about the Copenhagen event that you went to.
Yes.
I assume that was a really amazing event.
It was really fun, It was actually, we were so tired though. I have to say, we post all these edits where we look so great and we look like we're just on it. And we were, but we were also tired. We did a lot of work, but it was a great event.
Like, what actually was the event? Also, and what did you do in the event? And was there any reflections that you had that could be very helpful for our viewers that didn't have the chance to attend this event?
I mean, I guess the best insights would be by trying your best to go if you can, but I understand it's, during university, and so it's a bit difficult. And it's essentially a MedTech summit. So you have these key opinion leaders coming in, delivering panels and giving speeches about what they're doing. Just to give you an example, we had a surgeon who flew in from Johns Hopkins. That's where she works.
Oh, that's in the US.
Yes, exactly. And she's building, the best way I would describe it is probably some sort of incubator, which fosters new MedTech ideas and business plans. And she was speaking a little bit about that, some of the new innovations they're creating. We had people who were building sort of like ultrasound machines and things that are quite high tech and in their early stages. And they were just talking about their journeys too. So it's really insightful if you're looking into MedTech, if you're a student and either you want to help out with some of these projects or perhaps you want to get an internship at some of these bigger MedTech firms and you just get to connect with students.
That's really interesting actually. And it's almost like a good first step for people who want to get into MedTech or any kind of startup to do with MedTech, to just attend one of these events if they can, like through the network. I think you mentioned that through Tristan's network you managed to get to Copenhagen. So again, it comes back to your network, I guess. But
It doesn't have to be in Copenhagen either. There's
Yeah,
lots of amazing
it
hubs
doesn't
in
have to be
London.
in Copenhagen.
Yeah.
I went to quite a lot of different MedTech events over summer actually in London.
Yes,
There's
yeah.
actually an insane amount of events that a lot of students can go to. I think especially the ones that are hosted by Google Health. Not sure if you've heard of them.
I haven't actually managed to go to any of their events yet, but I want to.
No, it's definitely very, very helpful because it's like, it's just insane. As in, it's like, well, first of all, it's like, it's really cool going to the headquarters, number one. But secondly, it's like the people there are so passionate about just MedTech. And I assume like Copenhagen was the same. But
Yeah.
I think especially whenever everyone that's in the same ecosystem, everyone that is at that Google Summit event is UK-based founders and they're tackling UK or NHS problems. And
Yeah.
especially if that's something that you want to get into in the future. But I want to ask you a bit more about kind of, because obviously we're being tackled some MedTech regulations. And I know it's opening a can of worms.
I think you're
here.
very excited about these regulations.
But for viewers that don't really know too much
Yeah.
about MedTech regulations, are you able to explain in 3 minutes or less, like the brief, like bare basics
We could be here for hours.
of what it
Like,
entails?
and, like, basically about your company and about the regulations, right? You're very passionate about it, and so speak your heart out.
Oh God, it's been hard about regulations. God, no. So at the core of being a great clinician is building trust with your patient. This can be done in a variety of ways, but one of the hardest ways to get your patient, well, I guess one of the hardest trusts to achieve is bringing a device in, trialing it, explaining the benefits, the risks to the patient, and saying, this could really help, or maybe it may not help so much. This could be quite pricey. Is it worth trying? Everyone has to do their due diligence when it comes to research. But it comes from a point of trust. That's where regulations come from. Because if people would just start to build products here, there, and everywhere, there was no standardized mechanisms of checking if the products were safe, if they were effective. Because medtech products actually don't go through the same steps as, let's say, bringing a medicine to market, where you have these very extensive clinical trials, you have volunteers coming in, you have a lot of investment and funding. Of course, a lot of money is involved, but for trying out medtech devices, it looks a little bit different. And it's still, of course, it's still a very early sort of market as well. In terms of regulations, these are, the best way I can describe them is they're kind of like certifications that communicate something about your product. Either it has met the safety checklist, more or less.
Like accreditation.
Exactly, yeah. It's met the safety checklist to be able to be deployed, to be brought into commercialization. A good example of this is the FDA mark in the US, where, if you want to sell, especially medtech devices, they need to be FDA approved. Now, the UK's equivalent of that is MHRA. And what's really...
What does it stand for, sorry?
Medicines Health Regulations Agency. Maybe that's not true. Potentially, we need to fact check that.
Yes.
But
That's crazy.
medicines and
you know
health.
so much about it.
Oh yeah, there's taken some time obviously to read up on it,
Yeah.
and I'm still learning a lot about it. But yeah, so it's MHRA in the UK. And what's really exciting is MHRA are actually starting sort of a pilot scheme. I think it's called AI Airlock. That's what it's called. Airlock, representing sort of this sandbox, this regulatory sandbox where people are bringing their AI-assisted medtech devices and trialing them out, basically. And it's really exciting that MHRA are kind of co-piloting this and really championing this, because that's what we need more of. And it just makes it easier to get products that are actually really useful and bring them to that certification quicker so that they can be deployed and shared quicker.
You mentioned the MHRA, right?
Yes.
Is that almost in association with the NHS, or is it?
So their regulatory body is quite different, where they are standalone bodies, but they do provide that marking for devices, let's say, to be distributed maybe throughout the NHS or throughout private clinics. So they're a standalone body from what I understand.
Can I ask, what are the common markings that you would find on a medical device or certifications to look out for? Because for me, especially on placement at the moment in my third year, there's so many different symbols on devices.
Yes,
I'm like, I don't know what this means, or
language.
yeah, it
No,
really
yeah.
is. So it's just for kind of my knowledge and also for the audience or
okay,
those medical students.
Now you're really testing my master's knowledge, I have to say. In Europe, you're likely to see the CE marking.
I've seen it.
Yeah. We also have ISO certifications, which is more of a universal kind of branding, which communicates, if your product has gone through certain quality management systems and meets certain regulations. Then, as I mentioned, MHRA here, we've got the FDA in America. And that's the thing about MedTech devices. Your MedTech device could break into the American market and could gain FDA approval. That doesn't mean it's automatically going to gain MHRA approval or CE marking, for example. So you have to be very tactical in the way that you navigate these regulations. And at the forefront of that is patient safety and making sure that your product works, because it's one thing to have a product that works, but now if it's, let's say, very cost inefficient, or it's really hard to standardize with different supply chains worldwide, can make it quite difficult.
And with all, you have a lot of knowledge in this, obviously. With Orbion,
Yes.
am I correct in saying they help other companies, kind of navigate, these medtech companies navigate these challenges that are provided, but that exist? For example, in the UK with the NHS, the whole thing with trust.
Yeah.
That's what you do. That makes more sense. Moving to, I mentioned the NHS, and we mentioned it quite a bit. In the UK, it's a very different system to America. And I was speaking to this guy who also was he started like a medtech company.
Yeah.
It was almost like a strap he put around the leg.
Yeah.
And it measures and analyzes your cadence and your walking patterns. It was very interesting. He used it so much tech, but he had the limitation was the trust. And with the complications with going through the NHS, and he was explaining how it was such a annoying process to go through.
It's a hard one.
And I'm wondering, like, if clients come to you with these problems, and how would you solve those problems for them?
Yeah, so I think the first time we investigated and found that this is actually a huge problem is speaking to people who have made devices such as the person that you're referring to. In one of my master's classes, we actually got to speak to someone who was developing this sort of custom head mask, and it essentially helps radiotherapy target cancerous cells and protect the surrounding healthier cells when you've got that.
Is that only in the head area? Or?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
it's focused on neurosurgery, I believe. And I asked him sort of what was the most difficult part of getting your product to commercialization. He was like, FDA approval. It's really hard. It's really hard, yeah. And it's an area we're still learning lots about, and we're still finding out what's the best way, what are the steps that you need to follow through. But in terms of helping companies, if that is something that was a challenge for them, we would definitely want to look into how we could write up these kind of approval forms for them. It takes a lot of filing, takes a lot of legal work as well. So it's definitely time and even cost intensive, but that's definitely something we'd want to help them out with.
I see. And like you mentioned, that was really interesting, kind of like taking us through kind of the journey of just
A medtech company.
a medtech company and just absolutely everything. In terms of like, because you mentioned like kind of medtech devices a lot, I'm opening another can of worms here. But what exactly is a medtech device? As in, how is it classified?
Yeah, how would you define it?
Oof. This is really difficult because you could argue that a tongue depressor is a medtech device. A thermometer is a medtech device. Maybe a smart tongue depressor actually, because of that tech element.
Yeah.
But the way I see it, the way I would probably define it is a device in healthcare addressing any part of healthcare, whether it be patient screening, diagnostics, therapeutics, and it has an element of engineering, electronics, technology. That could be software, it could be machine learning, it could be hardware and electrical engineering. And it tries to fulfill an outcome that I would hope is sort of optimizing patient outcomes and getting patients through their pathway quicker, better, with a better quality of life, hopefully.
That was an amazing definition, honestly. That's really interesting. And you obviously Orbion's doing well right now.
God willing, yes.
Yes. And what are your future plans? Where do you want to take this in, let's say it's been 5 years?
Oh my gosh.
Where are you hoping what's the vision for
I
Orbion?
really like that you asked me this question because I'm very much a goal-orientated, let's manifest towards the next thing, create habits, create routines. The problem I find with thinking 5 years ahead, especially in such a dynamic and evolving field like MedTech, is that sometimes in your mind you might really commit and fall in love with a way of business that won't benefit you in a year's time or even 2 years' time. And maybe that glare of, no, this was my 5-year goal, this was my plan, I needed to raise this many funds or achieve this milestone. Sometimes it puts you in a tunnel vision where you don't appreciate, actually, that let's look at this market opening up, how could we help that? So instead of 5 years, I'm going to probably talk about my next goal, probably. It's hard to put a time frame on it, but I would say to have a really good we've got our portfolio clients, but to help a company go through most of that regulations, investment, marketing, commercializations process, and be able to say, we helped this company sell their MedTech device here and it's impacting this many patients, it's changing their lives, and without this product, they probably would have been a little bit worse off. I think that would be the next goal, to really take a company through most of the journey across that.
And at the start of your company journey, did you do any free trials or, to get those customer reviews? Because again, for the benefit of the audience, if someone tries this out, how important is it to get those customer referrals almost?
It's really important to have a reliable portfolio. You need to be able to show your prospective clients that, look, we've worked with people like you, we've produced results, people love numbers and data, and if you can prove to them, you can save them money or you can generate more income, that's probably the best case that you have. In terms of getting that portfolio built up, it's not so much free trials or like a freemium service that we offer. What we've done is we've tried to cut costs as much as possible along our services, to the point where we are not taking anything home, really, in order to produce our best quality work for clients that we think would be really beneficial to our portfolio and would teach us the skills that are integral to us leveling up and helping similar clients too.
An interesting question I have, because I think this goes with a lot of digital companies or consulting or exactly what you're doing in terms of and you don't need to give me specific numbers, and we can cut this out if needed. But what overheads do you have in a digital company like yourselves?
What do you mean by overheads?
So in terms of, let's say, you talked about, Yash talked about charging things for free, or at least charging things very cheaply. And you're talking about breaking even in a way that you're not taking much things home.
Yeah.
So what are the overhead costs for yourself?
Okay, are you talking overhead in terms of how much, let's say, Tristan and I have invested ourselves, or in terms of a general cost of running, let's say, a general service?
Oh, that's a good point. I would say general cost of running.
General cost of running, right. So, of course, this is going to be completely different depending on whatever you offer. Yeah. But let's just say you wanted to help a company out with their branding. That's something that both Tristan and I have lots of experience with prior to starting our company. We've helped Harley Street clinics with their marketing, and some of the, obviously I can't disclose costs, but let me give you a ballpark. Finding a really good videographer who's experienced in what they do, has a pretty good portfolio, can range anywhere between 300 to 500 a day. To hire their services.
That's a lot.
It's a lot.
I actually know you had a videographer.
Yeah.
Is that just for the company, but also for you, Tristan?
No. We hire a lot on freelance basis. So far, a lot of our team, they are working on other projects, which we think is great because they're attaining experience from lots of different angles. So no, our videographer is definitely working on other projects too. But because they're on a freelance basis. But yeah, so a videographer may cost around that much. And when you think about costs, I think everybody is brought up and conditioned to think about price in a X per hour rating. I think it's really important that you don't think of it that way, but think about all the back-end value that has gone in to them being able to produce what they can for you. For example, yes, videographers are not cheap. They're not, I won't lie. However, you're not just paying them for that day and for the filming and the direction that they're taking that day. You're paying them essentially for all the skills they've learned before you, all the experience they've taken up before you, the fact that they can produce high quality videos just from 1 or 2 hours of shooting. That's not a skill that anyone can really do. And it takes a lot of build up. So we pay according to the value that we would receive.
That's really interesting. And another question that I have, you mentioned you were talking about expenses. How do you, interested in Orbion as a company, manage them? Do you use like Excel, or is it an app that you use?
We are looking into accounting software as our finances are getting a little more sophisticated. We are using a business account. So I think that's nice because we get to have virtual cards, physical cards, and we just get to see exchanges between different clients as well, rather than having it all flood in and out of one account. So that's pretty good. And yeah, we have a really nice sort of accountant style friend who's experienced in like auditing and finance, and so he helps us out as well in terms of understanding the ins and outs.
Is that from your network, the accounting?
Yes. Yeah.
Again.
Through my network.
Is all that work?
No, and you just don't realize that. So some people that are your friends actually are doing something so interesting on the side, or maybe this is their full-time job, and they're like, you know what, like I actually want to give up some time and help you out, which is really lovely. Yeah.
It is. And because you mentioned about your personal branding as well, I take it that helps quite a lot with gaining trust from people that you reach out to, and also trying to find people that are interested in the same stuff as you as well.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the trust, you're just gonna have to ask the people that watch my content. Really, I'm gonna say, do you trust me? Or like, you know, it's. And I really don't want to ever paint across that like, whoa, I know all of this stuff, or like I'm, you know, right now my business is the best it could ever be. Like, it's not that. I'm literally a student. I'm also learning. And I really enjoy learning, and I'm just sharing with everybody like, oh, this is what you could do. If you're interested, this is an avenue you could take. And it definitely helps, especially, you know what, not even my Instagram and TikTok, but my LinkedIn is where I've probably found the most engaged students who want to, let's say, be involved with Orbion or want to talk more about MedTech and medicine. So professional platforms like that really do help build up your network. Yeah.
That's really interesting, actually. And now we're talking about your personal brand journey. How about we start from the beginning?
Oh, gosh.
Where it started. Oh, you mentioned like the niche has almost changed a little bit to more
Yeah.
lifetime stuff. So do you want to go through it on all the different platforms that you mentioned? Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn?
Yeah. I think on LinkedIn where just like everybody's just like, oh my gosh, no app makes me feel worse about myself than LinkedIn.
It's just
Like,
all achievements. Like.
So cheeky.
Did you see the one like there was this one in like the summer, this post like, oh, I just got married. Here's what it taught me about B2B.
Yes.
I saw someone put up a meal deal and they were like, here's why these choices, here's what you need to do with sales.
Yeah.
No, take a break. No. But yeah, but it feels like it's a game you have to play. And that's the way I see it as well. It's like I'm very, very much not an oversharer. It actually makes me really uncomfortable to start talking about myself or what I've done. And maybe it's not coming across, but it's a huge learning curve that I've had to have that, oh my gosh, if I want people to get interested in what I'm doing, I have to talk about what I'm doing. I can't just, keep it to myself all this time. There's definitely strengths in not oversharing certain things. However, in terms of how my journey with personal branding began, I started it literally to be like, to document it. I think one of my earliest videos was like, oh, I'm here at Winter Wonderland and this is, like everybody goes to Winter Wonderland, like it's not crazy. Like everyone knows what Winter Wonderland looks like. But I genuinely just wanted to document what I'm doing with my life because I'm a very reflective person. I love looking back and think, oh my gosh, that this was what I was doing a year ago, 2 years ago. I journal almost every day of my life since I was like in year 10, year 11. And I just wanted something in person that I could document. And then I started sharing it to people. Then I also started giving advice on medical applications. By advice, I just sort of mean my experience, the tips that I had to get like across the medical interviews or the UCAT, which is an entrance exam for medicine, that kind of thing. That's primarily what I do. And now we're definitely transitioning into more what is the day in the life of someone who's studying medicine, but also a business owner, someone who's doing a master's, but also is doing content creation. Because I want to share a little bit more that like, it's not a pedestal thing. Like it's not something you can't do. Anyone can do that. And sometimes it's hard because even I'm probably guilty of just only showcasing the good bits, I think. And I'm starting now with this pivot of my niche to showcase actually things go wrong, things take time. It's not what you see everyone posts the best part of themselves on LinkedIn. So yeah.
No, 100%. For me, not sure if you've seen my posts on LinkedIn, but yeah, not plugging this in, but no, I really agree with you. The whole personal branding thing, a lot of it is just like it's very easy to kind of overshare
Yes.
certain things, especially as like let's say if you get an opportunity to speak on an event, you get a really like amazing opportunity. It's
Yeah.
like sure you can post about it, but I think the platform really matters as well.
Completely.
Yeah, it really matters. And I think even for LinkedIn, sometimes like when you look at someone's LinkedIn profile, they look absolutely cracked. You're like, oh my goodness, it really can like it can
Yeah.
really be really bad. But a question I want to ask you is, do you separate your LinkedIn content with, let's say, your Instagram or your other platforms?
Definitely. I have to. I can't be posting some of the things that I post on my TikTok. I mean, the name is Med Baddie. Like, you know, that's not always going to run on LinkedIn. So with LinkedIn, I'm very intentional with showing more of the professional and academic side of what I do. Whereas my Instagram and TikTok is naturally more relaxed. It's more personal. It goes through maybe events that I'm going to, like vlog style, day in the lives. I still post some of that on LinkedIn now. I'm starting to. But I don't know, there's just this impression that everything has to look so clean and polished on LinkedIn. So that's what probably differentiates the platforms for me.
You're mentioning like now you're doing more day in the life stuff.
Yeah.
For a person who's tried content creation like the tiniest bit, like I just
Woo!
couldn't do it. It was a long day. It was a long
Yeah,
day.
yeah.
But it's exhausting. Not just filming, the editing.
The editing.
I was just wondering like how on earth do you have the time? Like when we first asked the question, who are you? You're like, I'm this. How do you have the
Oh my
time to do
gosh.
everything else?
I don't even feel that I do. Like it feels like sometimes I think the most important thing is being proactive, not reactive. That let's say there's lots of moments in my life where I was reacting to things as they came, and I didn't essentially had a plan in place to tackle. You can't always have a plan in place. Some things you're gonna kind of have to deal with as they come along. But that's why I really prioritize my routine, my schedules, having timetables in. It's really bad, and everyone thinks it's a joke, but like I actually ask my friends, whoever, like to organize catch-ups. We have to share dates and calendars. We have to slot in time, and otherwise it's not gonna happen. And so, and being a little bit of a control freak, I like that the earlier I can get to know something's happening, or I need to free up this day, I can
100%.
protect that time. But no, it's something I'm still very much figuring out. It's a lot, and I've had to say, there's been times where like people in my life have been like, you need to stop. just stop. Actually reevaluate what you're doing right now, because it's like, okay, even if you cut down this activity, you're going to replace it with something else. Like, what's wrong with you? And sometimes it's so easy to fall into that toxic productivity. That's something I'm still navigating for sure, being like, when is enough? When am I happy with how much I've achieved? I don't think any of us right now are willing to stay at the position we're at, which is nice. It's probably the mark of an entrepreneur as well, when you constantly want to elevate, but it's still something I'm figuring out.
No, I think that's one of the things with kind of people like us, that we have a vision and we want to make sure that every second we have of the day is meaningful in a way.
Exactly.
And I say meaningful because I think it's something that it's a journey that you find out, right? As in, I think there was a time where one of my friends, we were trying to plan out dates, and I'm like, I'm really sorry, I'm free 2 weeks in advance, and they're like,
Literally.
you might as well set me your calendar.
No, it gets like that.
No, I'm not doing that. No, it did not happen. So I want to ask, like, especially because I assume a lot of people that are watching this, they might be medical students, they might be students, they might be people that want to get into kind of MedTech in general. What's your advice for people that are very ambitious, but trying to manage their time in a way that's meaningful to them?
Don't put the pressure on yourself to figure out exactly what you want to do, and again, fall into that trap of only committing to that. Number 2, it's okay to do several things at once, but it's not okay to do things for the sake of doing them. I can definitely look at my younger self and remember that she felt she had to say yes to every opportunity because everything sounds so new, everything sounds so exciting, every research paper you want to be a part of, every startup you want to join. Think intentionally about what you can benefit from it, whether it's going to make you happy to do that. And I would say, if you don't feel happy and you're not enjoying what you're doing and you don't even see it adding to your future so much, you're just kind of doing it to get points or put something extra on your CV or on your LinkedIn. It's like you're going to carry that attitude further and further, and then you're just going to be exhausted and unfulfilled by whatever you end up doing. So be intentional about opportunities. Yes, be proactive, speak to people, but also be critical with what opportunities you really see yourself thriving in and could actually help you. Like, for example, when I did my MATLAB coding, I was like, I'm not going to tech. I'm not going to be a computer scientist. I just did it because I just wanted to know a little bit more about coding. But somehow that, opened up this huge door, which I wasn't aware of before. So also follow your interests, and I don't think they will fail you either.
I mean, that's, I think, perfect advice for anyone watching and want to start their own idea or whatever. And I think it's also a perfect note to end this episode. And I would just like to say thank you very much, Yosha, for coming on. I've learned so much. I know you have.
I've learned so much too.
I've really enjoyed this episode, so thank you very much for coming on.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This is my first podcast. Woo! God
Make
willing,
sure to check out Yosha on Instagram, MedBuddy, and TikTok.
Yes, thank you.
Check out all our socials as well.